was traveling through Africa, met a lot of wonderful people, but one street vendor stood out above the crowd. He stood out simply because of his name. Let's have ourselves a pocket-sized pep talk. I'll not only tell you his name, I'll tell you the lesson behind it.
A pocket-sized pep talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Always amazes me how much time and effort we'll put into some of the most meaningless business activities. For instance, when I first went into business, I found myself obsessing on cards and stationery. It was over 30 years ago, and thoughts of social media or even a website were not a part of anyone's business. Recently, I went to Tanzania and decided to go on an adventure of sorts. Like many African countries, tourism is one of the few sources of income for this struggling population. Wherever you go and whatever you do, there seems to be a cluster of friendly faces with bags of trinkets following you around. It's not that I'm not in the marketplace for a trinket or two when I travel. It's just so difficult figuring out who to buy from in a sea of vendors all selling the same thing. And yet, one man made it fairly easy for me to decide. I met him when we pulled our van up into the parking lot at the gate of a park we were visiting. We were heading on a 6-day trek through the mountains, which required some careful coordination. The park itself was off limits to street vendors, but the parking lot was fair game. No sooner did we file out of our van to begin to coordinate our gear did the onslaught begin. Out of the woods, dozens of vendors poured into the parking lot, each saying and selling pretty much the same thing. That is, except for one man. He held back a bit, and knowing that no one was going to buy a thing before we began our adventure, he approached us from a different angle. First, knowing none of us wanted to add any weight to our gear before we even started, he barked out, "You buy nothing right now." That certainly caught my attention. And then he taught us all his name multiple times. "When you come back, you find me. My name is Mr. Price, and I be right here waiting." He probably caught a small smile from me because he marched right up to me and asked, "What's my name?" I said, "You're Mr. Price. And who's going to be right here when you're done with just what you need?" "You, Mr. Price," I repeated like a good student. With that, we shook hands, and away I went on my trek. I walked for 6 days, and in those 6 days, I thought about a lot of things, and one of them was Mr. Price. For some reason, I just couldn't get that name out of my head. Was it because it was unique? Was it because it was original? Was it because he had me repeat it a few times? In fact, I think it was all of the above. When I returned from my trek, the sea of vendors once again appeared from nowhere, each waving the same handful of trinkets. But I was looking beyond them. I was looking for Mr. Price. He might not have remembered me, but I sure remembered him. And I bought a few items from him as well. What's in a name? A whole lot more than you think. It can linger lost on the bookshelves like so many self-help books, or it can sell over 25 million copies like 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. It can give you a head start over your competition, or it can fall on deaf ears and lead you into obscurity. The message is clear. The name and the subsequent branding you attach to your business, your book, your products, and more may very well be the most important decision you ever make.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jolles.com.